Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, we're not stumped. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome the band, The Resilient. And I got to be honest with you, I am so excited about today's podcast. I saw these gentlemen in an article about, I'd say about a month ago, and they've been around longer than that. But when I saw their story, I knew I wanted to talk to them. And they're gracious enough to take their time and talk to me today. So I'm very excited. Let me introduce them. It's Nathan Kulwicki. He was in the Army. Timothy Donnelly was a Marine, or is a Marine. I want to make sure I say it correctly. Okay. You correct me anytime I'm wrong today. So thank you so much. And Juan Dom Dominguez, a Marine. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for being on the podcast. I'm very excited about today to talk about the band, The Resilient. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this band, if you want to just hit pause and go find out more about them, go to theresilientband.com. So do that. And they got merchandise too. So go over there and start spending some money on their website. So we always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words. So I want to learn a little bit more about you. And I'm going to start with Nathan. Nathan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I had a, relatively normal, I would say, upbringing in the Buffalo, New York area. Have a brother who's actually also in the band. He plays bass. His name's Eric. Around the time I got out of high school, I really hadn't thought too much about the future and where things were going. And I knew, I think looking back, that I needed some sort of a change, some self-discipline, or just discipline in general. So I looked at joining the military, and I ended up going into the Army. And after, about a year going through the normal sort of Army boot camp and went to my first duty station, I ended up deploying to Afghanistan, the southwest province of Farah. And about 6 months into that deployment, I ended up getting shot, in what they call a green on blue. Basically, the guys, our main job there was training the Afghan army. So unfortunately, one of them sort of went rogue and turned on the group of my guys, and I was one of the casualties. Result of that was a few of us got wounded. I turned out to be probably the worst. And I woke up about 3 weeks later in Walter Reed Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. And I was missing my right leg through the knee. And that was kind of the start of my amputee journey. I was 20 years old. And it's been about, 12 years since then. And that's kind of I guess the roots of where I started growing this thing that we got now, the Resilient. That's around the time that I met Dom and Tim. And I'll leave it there for now.
Well, thank you for sharing. Timothy, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I had an upbringing that was a little bit different. I was born and raised in Jordan in the Middle East. My parents were missionary and humanitarian workers, and worked for a lot of years from Jordan to the States, but most of the time was over there. And over the years, got to know different Marines who served at the embassy, and just had a great admiration for them. And I also grew up speaking Arabic, so I wanted to put that to use to try and be a, kind of a middle point between, our troops and the locals. And so as somebody who grew up with both cultures and with both languages, I wanted to be a middle point, and where so many places you find one culture will insult the other in different ways without meaning to, but you run across these speed bumps of trying to understand one another. And I could be a Marine that on the ground, instead of having to trust, possibly local interpreters and some of the different influences that they come under, because of their position of trust. I could be a Marine there that, my Marines would know, hey, I said this is what he said, and they know that that's the case. And unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of time in country. 30 days was, yeah, 30 days in was when I was injured. I got blown up by a command detonation IED, and it was buried in the base of a wall next to me. So it funneled the blast. And so luckily nobody else was injured in that encounter, but I lost both of my legs above the knee, and my right arm got pretty torn up, and so that's a big section of my back, and a big plate of titanium in there holding it together. But it's amazing, I've still got my arm, and yeah, so spent a lot of time at Walter Reed recovering, and it's been just about 12 years now. So
Well, thank you again. Thank you for sharing that. And then Dom, I'd like to hear more about your story.
Well, I was born in New Mexico. I was born in a place called Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I was raised in a town called Demi, New Mexico. I played music since about the age of 12, starting off in trumpet. I taught myself guitar around 15 and the bass around that time. And then played throughout high school band, marching band, pep band, jazz band. So I did all those kind of type things. My father, my uncles, all my people I looked up to when we graduated, they were either in the military or they were going to the military. So my town's not pretty big on opportunities of employment or growth. So I thought I would follow in the footsteps of my father and my uncles and grandfathers and join the military. So I did that whole route, and then all while playing music, playing my guitar throughout in the barracks and stuff, and then I got injured in 2010 in Sangin, Afghanistan, and so uh, I stepped on an IED while we were investigating the compound of interest, if you will, and it turned out to be an IED making factory, and that's why it was heavily guarded. I ended up stepping on a well-placed IED in the ground that was too low, so luckily for me, it didn't blow up all the way, and it resulted in both of my legs above the knees and my right arm above the elbow. So coming back, people were like, I always would make jokes. I think like we were talking earlier, jokes help lighten the situation. I think for us, they were kind of horrific jokes a little bit, to ease our minds, like joking about getting blown up. And I remember talking with my family and everyone and said, oh, it's cool if I get blown up, It's cool if I lose my legs, but don't let it be my arms, because I play music and that's the only thing I care about. Well, lo and behold, I get blown up. I lose this arm. And people are freaking out, but I for some reason wasn't. And I was more in the mode of like comforting people around me, saying like it's gonna be cool, even making jokes like I don't have to do the officers anymore and stuff like that. So, just kind of trying to make light of the situation. And so I ended up doing that, and a lady even gave me like $1,000 to go buy a custom guitar to kind of inspire me to play again. And I had a prosthetic and everything with a pick, and honestly, it was cool to play the guitar, but it just wasn't like before. And so I decided to instead take that $1,000 and buy a drum set. Like that was going to be any easier, but I did it. And then, later throughout, the years, it's been what, 14 years since I've been an amputee now. And so like throughout these years, it's like, oh crap, I've developed many drum arms that have broken over the past, but now we have a solution to get me drumming. I patented pedals for my kick drum. So, throughout this whole process of like how it started to where we're at and where we're drumming now and into the Resilient and being the drummer for the band, it's been a wild journey, but that's kind of like my musical history. And then I also taught myself keyboard and I produce music as well. So.
Well, that's fantastic. And so you play the drums, and then Timothy, what do you play?
So I'm the lead singer.
Okay.
And I play harmonica, maybe do
I
a
should have
little
asked
egg
that
shaker,
I should
tambourine.
ask that question differently, shouldn't I? I shouldn't have assumed you
No.
play an instrument, but no, it's okay.
Well,
Hey,
actually, he does
It's an
play
instrument.
He plays guitar as well.
there you go.
And so like in one of our first songs, Freedom's Cost, there's like a little melody that's kind of catchy in it. And Tim wrote that. So like he does play guitar. He just doesn't play as like me. He doesn't play it as often as we used to,
Got it. Nathan, which one, what do you play? Should I assume maybe you're
Yeah,
backup vocals?
You can assume. I
Backup
play
dancer.
like, yeah, I'm mainly the backup dancer. Yeah. I just play rhythm guitar. Yeah.
That's outstanding. So,
He's
but here's
being
a
modest. He writes most of our music too.
Oh, really? How does
I'd,
I'm going to get into that question. I want to learn more about that. No, and if I cut someone off, please continue.
no, I
you're
would
good.
just,
Oh, you're good, brother. You're
yeah.
good.
Okay. Well, that was the thing, as we got on and as I read more about you a month and a half ago and a lot more since then, you're all in different locations. So what is the genesis of the band and how did it all come together? Because I read the story, but I'd love the listeners to hear that story. And I'll give that to Dom if that's okay.
Yeah, I think from Tim and Nathan's journey at the beginning was a little bit different, but we kind of met at the same area. So I too was at Walter Reed, but before the guys got there, I had already transferred home to Balboa to be closer to my unit in Camp Pendleton, California. So I met Roger when I was, and this is Roger Waters of Pink Floyd. I didn't know he was going to be there, but I was invited all the way from California back to New York to do attend a Bob Woodruff Foundation event. And Bob Woodruff is the news correspondent that got here in Iraq all those years ago. He started a foundation because he was tired of seeing troops in the hospitals with no family. So basically, he was raising an event to raise money to fill that. And during the pre-party, I saw Roger walking around, and he kind of saw me. He entered and he beelined it to me. Later on, he told me that it was because he had never met an injured guy before, and he was kind of uncomfortable being around other people, so he wanted to talk to me, just kind of come. And so when he came, he was like, "Oh, I'm from a little band called Pink Floyd," and I was like, like so start kind of fanning out. But I didn't. I kept it together, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm about." And long story short, I ended up telling him I played the guitar, and he looked at me very funny. He was like, "Well, how the hell do you play guitar?" I was like, "Well, I used to play guitar, I play drums now." And he looked at me like, "Okay, well, that's even more, whatever." So then the story goes about joking around. He said, "Okay, well, I heard Bruce Springsteen's gonna put a show on for you guys tonight," and I go, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I put a way better show than he does," and I kind of told him like, "Well, I don't know. I've never seen you play live." And he looked at me like, "Well, how dare you? Like, you know who I am, So like he called his bodyguard over and he wrote on a piece of paper. He was like, here's my personal email. He crumpled it up and gave it to me. He's like, "Here's my personal email. And if you ever give it off, I'll cut your other effing arm off," And it was beautiful because I wasn't treating him like a rock star. He wasn't treating me like I just got injured and handing me things and opening my meals and giving me a drink, He was treating me like I wanted to be treated human. And not that I get it, sympathy, people see an injured guy, freshly injured, and it's human nature. But for me, it was just overwhelming. And for somebody to treat me normal, it was just refreshing. Yeah. So that friendship grew. And at the same time, they invited him next year to play that show. And he didn't feel comfortable. So he started looking for injured people to play with. He told them, "I only do it if I can get wounded warriors, and bring them and play with them." So basically, he looked around in DC, and I think I'll let Nathan and them take over. Well, in Music Corps, that program that they were a part of, we basically got together. They got together first in 2012, I believe, at the Beacon Theater. And then the next year, he brought me out to Madison to play drums in a full rock show. So that's kind of our initial beginning of meeting the guys. I had already known Tim because he's considered a triple amputee. And so like we're grouped in that category of being like at the time I think I was number 20 something, 20 late eight surviving amputees or something like that, or triples. So it was a whole new big story. So we all kind of knew each other. And then going from there, we just continued to play shows. But I'll let the guys take it from there.
Yeah, Nathan, from your perspective, I'd like to hear.
Yeah. So there was this program at Walter Reed called Music Corps, and kind of the goal of that was to take these wounded veterans. At the time, was quite a few of them were, basically this kind of limbo stage of recovering, and a lot of us sort of transitioning out of the military. It's like we couldn't, you either had to find a different job or you couldn't continue doing, what we all were doing is like infantry. So this music corps program kind of took up the job of putting, guys to work in a productive manner, by being basically a serious music program. They brought some of the best instructors from the Washington, D.C. area to teach whatever guys were interested at the time. And I got involved in that program. The guy who started it, Arthur Bloom, he's like a yard trained and has, interesting background. I had seen him playing piano and jamming with this other talented guitar player. There's this place in Walter Reed called the America Building, and there's like a big atrium and a piano there, and anybody can just sit down and play it. So I was like getting pushed in a wheelchair by my mom, and I was like, oh, I gotta see that. What's going on over there? Music. So I was like the only one sitting there watching these two guys play for like 45 minutes. And when they got done, I talked with Arthur, and he set me up with some lessons. And that's also where I initially met the other guitar player in our band, Greg Loman, who was a teaching instructor there at the time, and started taking guitar lessons. And that was kind of where I really started diving deeper into music again. I had messed around in high school and all that. So yeah, right, this is all around the same time. Started taking lessons, and then all of a sudden, Arthur was like, "Hey, do you want to, come jam with some guys and meet a rock star?" Like basically out of the blue. And I was like, I wasn't so much into the idea of meeting a rock star. That didn't really turn me on either. But I felt kind of bad that I got invited, and I was like, oh, it'd probably be good to meet some guys. So that's kind of, I think initially, this is like 2012, where I met Tim initially, and a bunch of other guys that we sort of went on this musical journey with, and eventually got to play with Roger Waters. And yeah, I'll let Tim tell his experience from that.
Yeah, great. Go ahead, Tim. I want to hear more.
Yeah, so for me, I had seen Arthur and Greg, the instructors from the nonprofit. I had seen them around different times, like in the atrium and stuff that Nate was talking about. But so at that point, guitar had been my main thing, and my right arm it was completely dead. Couldn't move it, couldn't do anything with it. Just useless lugging it around. And they came up to me one time when I was doing like some of my occupational therapy and physical therapy and stuff, and they came over and they're like, oh, this is who we are, and we heard you used to play guitar. Is that something you'd be interested in? I was like, you see what's going on here? Like there's, and at that point I had an X Fix and the whole nine on it. And so I couldn't even get close to a guitar without, like putting holes in it or something. But yeah, and at that point it just hurt, like music, just listening to music was just like physically painful. I mean, because music, it's emotional and it's connective, and it'll take you right back to where you were the first time you heard it, and it was a good thing, because being deployed, being um in combat and stuff, we're trained in that time leading up, and then it's reinforced when you're there, like, just shut it all away, push everything down, just deal with the mission, deal with the moment, act, move, do what you got to do. And so on that side of things, it was good, but I couldn't hardly, I wouldn't hardly ever listen to music because I would just end up breaking down. And so yeah, a couple times Arthur and Greg came to talk to me. I told them to take a hike because I was just like, I can't. No, don't wanna, can't do it. And then yeah, there just came a point where there was one day where I could just feel God kind of like nagging at me in the back of my mind. He's like, maybe just go see, just go take a look, just see what's up. And went, chatted a little, just sat there and listened, hung out some. And yeah, then soon after that, was Arthur was, like, hey, there's going to be the other guys there, and there's going to be this rock star there, and might be fun. And like Nathan, I almost didn't go because it was like, oh, I mean, at the time I was like, I don't, what rock star would be there that, like, like, I don't care right now, like,
Yeah.
that's just extra pressure. It was, like, it was exhausting just going and spending, a little time with 3-4 guys in the room, just whatever, talking and listening to some music or something. Like, that was just exhausting. And so yeah, but went, and next thing you know, we're getting asked to do this show. And that first, yeah, those first shows it was really the make it or break it time, for just, it's like, I haven't performed on stage for anything, like, um I jammed a little bit in high school with a couple guys here and there, but never, it wasn't like performance stuff. The biggest performance stuff was like something at church, like playing with the worship band or something,
Yeah.
And so yeah, those first couple of shows was really the just the make it or break it, rubber to the road. Are we, capable of taking this pressure, pulling through? And well, I mean, here we are.
I think a lot of people are very happy you did go through that. And I want to remind everyone that I'm talking to the band The Resilient. They can be found at theresilientband.com. Go check it out. Excellent band. But you said something, and I want to kind of dig into it a little bit more. And I'm going to ask Dom this question. But you said music is emotional and connective. And I already had a question I wanted to ask you, but based off of that, I think it's an even more, it's a more timely question. What is the reception of the band as you go out, and has it changed over time?
I think the reception of the band it hasn't changed. It's just growing stronger. But I feel like every time people see us, it's an array of emotions. They're either inspired to do something that they feel like they couldn't do, or they're having a bad day, and now, like, how can they possibly, because we put them in a good mood. Not only are we out there living the best life that we can possibly live, we're actually good musicians. We actually can play our instruments. We have catchy songs. So I think it's like a combination. Like, there's no great experience for me. Like, at first it was a lot of doubt if I could play. I mean, Roger just took it on a whim that, oh, let's invite this Chipaki to play drums. Like, I mean, I could even think if I was normal, I'd be like, well, how's that gonna work? Like one hand? Like how is he gonna just do all the drums? Like, so for me, I've always been the type of guy that kind of likes the underdog status. So for me, it was every time I got to prove somebody, or they would hear, or I'm behind a kid. So Tim is visually up front more. They can see that he's missing them. Sometimes if I get to the stage quicker and people are coming late to the show, they don't know that I'm a triple amputee. And so that's even a more kick for me that they just enjoyed the music. They thought it was good drummer. And oh shit, you're missing fucking three limbs too. Yeah. And then I always get compared to Rick Allen, which I love because Rick Allen's, I think, a more beast than I am for having to retrain his brain and do all his missing arm parts with his feet, you know, amidst doing his hi-hat and his kick drum. So, I mean, I have a great admiration for anybody who's, you know, just trying their best to do with what they have because, you know, life's too short to sit there and waste, you know, negatively and instead of, you know, just you can do anything with patience. And I think that's the message that we've always shown that it was funny, we didn't like the word resilient at first. I mean, it was given to us by one of our earlier managers. Not because it's just kind of like somebody called, oh, you're a hero. And you're like, oh, no, like I don't want to be called a hero because it just seems like in the word in Spanish we call it creído. Like, you know, like, oh, you think you're no, I don't. I don't consider myself a hero. However, I'm not going to take that word away from you. If you think I'm your hero, that's okay, and I'm going to respect that. So, kind of with that light and the resiliency of it, even Nathan harps on this because it's true. We're all resilient, you know. It's just can we find it? And I love this band because I think that we do an excellent job of carrying that vessel to and message to people that everyone's resilient. Everyone goes through hard times. You don't have to be military to go through hard times. You don't have to be in the military to have PTSD. You don't have to be like the life is hard in general. Life sucks in general. So if we can be a message of like, hey, we're all in this together, no matter how many times you get knocked down, you know, we're all here to help. We're all here to lend a hand, you know, and you may not think something's possible, but I'm going to be here to show you that it is just because I love life and God gave me a second chance and I'm not trying to waste
it. Great. By the way, I really like the name Resilient. I'm glad you guys kept it. Nathan, what was something that when you first got together with the band that you thought, wow, we got something here? What was that like?
Well, yeah, it started pretty early on, and I don't think that I didn't know what was going on or I didn't recognize it until a lot later. Like what Dom was saying, like at first I didn't like the name The Resilient, and I didn't accept what it was actually going on. But probably just even the first time we played this music core show with Roger in 2012 even, and I remember pretty vividly there was a lot of pressure. It was like, why am I doing this? I felt the pressure, even though there was like 30 other veterans on stage, like 12 guitar players. My guitar was probably muted, so it didn't even matter if I messed up. But I felt that pressure. But then getting on stage and basically seeing a lot of severely wounded service members in the audience and stuff, and that had an impact. And then hearing kind of the response afterwards, you know, it had some sort of a impact on me. And I think now looking back, that's where I can say like, okay, that was some of the reason why I kept doing it, you know. And even though it took a long time to get rid of those feelings of like dread, like going out and performing, you know, I didn't like it for the longest time. I still kind of don't really like performing. But you know, I think now I accept sort of the circumstances and the opportunities that we've taken to kind of, you know, capitalize on what could have been a negative thing and turn it into a positive, you know. So
yeah. Tim, did you have the same reaction too, where you're like, why am I doing this? You know, I'm nervous.
Yes. I mean, very much so because like for the first show, I was just one of what 10 backup singers or something like that.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And and then it was oh man. Then it was like a little I'm trying to remember how long before the show. It was a number of weeks, but Roger ended up asking me to sing one of the lead for one of the songs, called Wide River to Cross by Livon Helm. Um, and we had, it was like Roger had reworked it to be like rockier, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember the first words like to start the song, no matter how many times I went through it. It was just, yeah. And I just, the guys will tell you the, sitting out there, like out front with all eyes on you. It's, not my favorite. It's definitely not. Guitar, like guitar was my main thing. And like, I would sing as accompaniment to the guitar. And I have this, musical instrument shield between you and I. But yeah, so definitely very exposing. And a little bit of you look so different. You're, some of us were still bandaged up and whatever, but kind of Nathan made the point of like, it doesn't have to be perfect to, but yeah, in the early days we called it pet the vet, when you feel like you're just kind of there for the spectacle of it almost.
Yeah.
And that's all, from in here. That's all, that's not reflecting on anybody else except for, my own insecurities and attitude at the time. But yeah, I mean, doing some of that stuff is really, for me, what like kind of launched my confidence and just even the vision of like this was never a plan for my life of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the lead singer in a band. No.
Well, the reason why I asked that question, I shared with you gentlemen that I do a little stand-up comedy myself around the Valley. I've been doing it for quite a bit of years. And I can't tell you how many times, especially starting out, that when I'm in the green room, let's say, I look and I go, well, hey, there's a door that I can exit right now. I can get out of here right now. But there is a feeling of accomplishment when you're done. Would you agree? And I'll give it to Dom. When you're done with your set, you're done. It's like a victory to a certain extent. Is that something you also feel?
I'm quite different than the other two. I think I feel like I'm more the attention seeker, which is funny because I'm all the way to the back and I'm behind drums. So like Tim always tries to like move out of the way. So like maybe they'll focus on me more than Tim. But I feel like it has to be said that these guys never perform. I used to play trumpet solos in front of 1,500 people. I
Oh,
used to do
wow.
stuff. So like I was in a band. We played shows. So I had a little bit more. Our lead guitarist, he's in. Um, a cover band that's really popular and does really well, and they play like 300 dates out of the year. I mean, so his stage presence, I kind of want to paint a picture for the people that we don't actually live in the same areas. We don't get together enough. So the leaps and bounds of Tim and Nathan have grown, have overcome in their stage fright and their confidence. It's like tenfold. If we were to able to do this more, you'd see even more growth from them. So I just kind of want to point that out that I've seen Nathan grow from hardly talking to making eye contact, to being more open, more social. He does a lot of our manager responsibilities, so he has to talk to more people. He's got to put that in charge person in mentality on. So Tim, of course, being our lead singer, talking to the crowd, I couldn't be more proud of them stepping into those roles. So like for me, to answer your question, I always feel like, to me, writing a song is great, jamming is fun, but there's no greater experience, no greater adrenaline other than combat that most vets try to seek than playing on stage for me. Even if I'm scared, even if I'm nervous, even which I really don't, I just feel like music has been something that I'm more nervous of other things than this because this is, I feel like, something I've been fluent in since I was 12. It's a language that I speak very well, and I love sharing that message and that energy with people. So it is a very big accomplishment because, especially if we nail all the parts and we had a hell of a show and there is no greater experience in my life than that, you know.
That's fantastic. And I want to talk a little bit more about the band, but right now I want to kind of switch gears and talk about the limb loss community, and we're all a part of it. And I'll start with you, Nathan. What is something that maybe you didn't realize about being an amputee that now you have learned in your own journey?
Well, I probably started at zero pretty much. Like I didn't never really thought about it a whole lot until it happened to me. So yeah, I pretty much everything learned, on the go. I think probably that's a lot of people. I'm sure it's a bit different as a congenital person, that is born like that, but still you're learning as you're growing up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think, you know, meant a lot of probably the hardest stuff I've had to go through is like, aside from initially when it happened and like some pain and things like that, is like the mental aspects of getting over, just saying like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this thing, and then all of a sudden I tried doing it. I like kind of do it. And I'm like, oh, I guess I can do that thing. Adaptive, a lot of it's like this idea of being adaptive and figuring out how to do it in a way that works for you. So I would say, yeah, just that's probably the biggest takeaway. That's kind of a general thing versus like specific, like, oh, like these band-aids work good for the situation, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, please, Tom, if you wanted to add to that.
I just agree with him. Yeah, I feel I agree with what he was saying.
Absolutely. And then Tim, I want to ask you a question as far as kind of in the same realm or the same spirit of the question. As we walk around like we do with limb loss, people certainly look at us. How did that journey for you transpire? Because there's, for some people, hey, even congenitals like me, some people don't like it. Some people think it's the greatest thing ever. How has that impacted you as a person?
I had thought about it beforehand. We had our conversations, with our squads and platoons and stuff of, like you'd have guys saying like, oh, if I'm missing more than one limb, don't even bother saving me. I don't want to live like that. And so I was one of the guys who said, no, I think I could actually do that. I think I could take that. It would be tough. It would, the situation would suck, but I think I could do it, and that just, I don't know. I understood it was a possibility, not probable, but certainly possible. And that just kind of, I just kind of had that mentality going into it. And for me, luckily, I could remember everything about the day of my injury and, directly afterwards and stuff. And so that gave me continuity, in terms of in my own mind, of the events, the what I said, what happened around it. And so where some guys, the last thing they remember is going to bed the night before they were injured, taking their boots off at the rack, and then they wake up at the hospital missing a couple limbs or, part of their face. And so for me, I woke up at the hospital and my family was all there. And really, yeah, at the end of it, a lot of the time I was the one comforting them. I was the one making jokes to them and trying to light, because it's easier to go from my perspective. It's easier to go through the suffering yourself than to witness someone you love suffer that same way. And so none of my other guys, I was the one, and so I felt okay with that. And there's going to be a lot of learning and a lot of you know um, unforeseen awkwardness and situations. Um, but I'd say the early days, like some of the basic things like having to have a couple of, nurses help you get on a bedpan and, then they're cleaning you up and everything. And like some of those basic things were probably the hardest to stomach. But at the same time, you can ask these guys, but there isn't much that, in terms of like makes us feel too, uh, I don't know, humiliated or too small. Like we know what we are.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. And one of the things I want to ask, and I want to ask you, Dom, because there's people that are going through their own journeys right now, right? And they're various stages of their journeys. And one of the things I've learned from a lot of the people that have been on the podcast is there's another side. I guess that's the way they describe it. Hey, there's ups and downs to life for everyone. And certainly what you've gone through, you gentlemen have gone through is very, 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 very deep hole, but you've come back up. What is it like to get back to that other side and be where you're at now? What is that like? And what is that journey like?
I mean, I think when I first initially got wounded, like Tim was saying, you go from being a Marine who's serving his country, defending his country, to literally being on your back and people having to wipe your ass for you and shave your face where you feel pretty worthless. To a little months down the road in recovery and you still kind of have a bad attitude and you're at the MATSI, which is basically like the occupational PT area where you would put on your prosthetics or stretch or try to get strength training back into you. And I was in a bad mood. I wasn't feeling good because I both of my eardrums are blown because of the blast. So I was always dizzy, vomiting. I was never really feeling good. And one day I was being an ass and I saw this Marine walking kind of funny. He was in a tracksuit. And I said, "What's this asshole's problem?" basically. And my therapist was just looking for the time that he could just tell me something because I was just in such a funky mood. And he says, "Well, actually, I don't know if I can say his name, but that's actually a quad amputee and he's on his way to his driving lesson." Well, I didn't have any fee, but I felt like I needed to pull something out of my fucking mouth. So that's where I was, it kind of woke me up like, whoa, what am I feeling sorry for myself? I'm not burned. I'm not blind. I have one good arm to still do my tasks. I have to be grateful for what I have because I'm sure somebody who's blind would want to be able to have vision. I have a beautiful wife. I have a daughter. I have family that I would love to see. So like there was a point that was kind of my slap in the face, like reality wake up. God gave you another chance. Your buddies died and don't get tomorrows for your today right now. So make it count. So that was kind of my wake up and my realization. Now, looking back, like I think it's kind of funny all the things that I couldn't do because of fear and the unknown. Because like tapping into that question you asked before, did I think about coming back as an absent? No. I didn't think about that as a possibility. It's either I was gonna be shot and killed, or I'm gonna come back, messed up in the head, but come back, or shot. Never did I think it was gonna be in pieces. So having to now tapping into what Tim said, when it's happening to you versus other people, I feel like all that training they gave us, all that stuff really helped us. What was difficult was being in hospital, being wounded, and seeing your brother still coming and dying, seeing the KIA next to their name, or seeing them in pieces. I think that was the roughest, the unknown. So coming on the other side, I mean, I've I've done more as an amputee than I ever did with all of my limbs. I've snowboarded, I've did sled hockey. I drive. I wear prosthetics to drive. I do have adaptive pedals to drum. I have a drumming arm. So if you can think it, somebody can build it, and you can be doing it. So that's the attitude I have. And so coming on the other side, there is another side. Life gets better. Pain dissipates. Memories last. Don't get me wrong. The horrific things still will stay there. But as time passes, it does get better. You can stomach it better. You learn to have a support system. You learn to what triggers you, what doesn't trigger you, how to stay away from those things. So as big of a journey it is, there is another side.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you all for sharing that part of your stories. And again, I'm talking to The Resilient. They can be found at theresilientband.com. And I want to talk more about the band because I think you got some new stuff coming out. Nathan, I'd love it if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we actually just released our first album called One, and that was the first of August, and that's on the normal streaming form like Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. Yeah, we're really proud of it. Put a lot of work. It's kind of the culmination of most of the time we've been together. There's songs on there that were started, uh, I don't know, like 6 years ago. And I will go back to one of the earlier points, tiny bit of pushback to Dom, but no disrespect. Like I think, he said, I write a lot of the stuff, but I would say it's really quite a collaborative effort. There's songs on there that, like, say this one called Threads of Color, which I think is one of the most catchy. It's the last song on the album. I didn't really have anything to do with that song. It kind of came out of I think a time when Dom and Tim and Greg were at Dom's way back in the day. It's sort of evolved, and it's the sound, but the core of it was put together. And yeah, everybody, like Dom mentioned, this one of our first three singles. We had three singles out for the longest time. This one, Freedom's Cost, that was like a Tim, wrote the melody, and then I remember Dom came up with the drum part, and then it sort of shaped its way from there. And now some of the new music we've written, I would say, has my brother's influence on it now, which the early has his own creative input. So it's this new album, One More, is kind of a culmination of where we were to like about where we're at now. And I think it's only going to get more and more interesting and better.
That's excellent. I want to make sure that I heard it correctly. Where can some of this be found?
So like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music. You can find us on YouTube and pretty much any social media. Instagram, Facebook. Our website has links to all of these things.
Yeah, your website has links to right in the header, right in the main navigation of the site, right at the top. It'll take you everywhere you need to go, including again the merchandise page. The reason why I keep bringing it up because I like your merchandise. I'm gonna either get the hoodie or the long sleeve shirt. I don't know, one of the two. I haven't decided yet, but I'm gonna get one of them. It's really cool. I love the logo. I mean, that's one of the things I really like. And did one of you guys design the logo? Did I read that right, or am I making that up?
So I designed the logo. So if you look at it closely, it's basically me. It's the arms missing. There's a blast. And then my wife, she's a graphic artist. She basically made it look good, presentable for the band, and she's done a few of our t-shirt designs as well. But yeah, we try to keep everything in house. Now we have another artist who does our albums, Takis, which he's done, I believe, all of ours except for one that actually Tim's wife, Freedom's Cost, I believe, is the album cover is a picture she took. So yeah, we're all pretty creative in some way.
So Tim, I'll throw this to you. Is what's next for the band? Is there going to be a tour? Or is there going to be because again, you guys talked about you're all in different locations. Are you going to get together?
Yeah. So as of right now, we have a show planned for the end of September in Sag Harbor for the Sag Harbor Music Festival, and we're gonna have probably a day or two of rehearsal for that. That we're all gonna be together, and then we have a mini tour planned for November, and we have a lot of plans for this coming year. We're setting up a larger tour, and am I allowed to drop the name on that, guys? Is that or
yeah,
I don't know.
We have
yeah,
go ahead.
So we're going to be doing, it's called the Leave No Man Behind tour, and we're going to be performing for VAs, VFWs, and different veteran communities wherever we can, and yeah, so it's pretty exciting.
That is extremely exciting. When you're in Arizona, if you ever come to Arizona, please look me up. I'd love to meet you gentlemen in person. Last thing, because I want to thank you all for your time, but I want to ask one question to each one of you individually. Away from the band, what are some of the things that you're looking to do in your life, or what are you looking forward in your life? And I'll start with you, Nathan. What else are you looking forward to in life?
I'm just looking forward to pursuing this thing we got going with the resilience. I look forward to, starting to grow a family with my wife who's walking in the door right now. Come on in.
Hi. Yeah, tell her I said hi.
Yeah.
Who's this guy?
So yeah, just kind of living, I guess, I'd say like my best life. Like you said, I'm kind of feeling like I'm on the up. I was in a down, like a kind of a depression,
Sure.
Even at the start of this band, and it took me a while to finally sort of find purpose. That's one thing I would add to what we were talking about earlier is, to me anyways, it's hard. You can be told all the right things and try to do all the right stuff, but until you find like a real purpose, it's hard to make everything line up and work.
Yeah, that's great advice. I completely agree with you 100%. How about you, Tim? What are you looking forward to in life moving forward, next 5, 10 years, next 5 minutes? I don't care. Whatever your answer is great.
Yeah, so I'm taking some courses and working towards some yeah, just I'm just loving getting back into learning, and I so my wife and I are actually about to be moving for about the next 9-10 months, to a year in there. She got accepted to a master's program, and so it's a master's in modern slavery, human trafficking, and data analysis, like migration data analysis, I think. And so that's going to be happening in England. So we're going to be moving shortly, and I am going to be back and forth a fair bit, and it's going to be great though. Really excited about the giant opportunity for her, and the possibilities of where that can go moving forward.
That's great. Congratulations on all that. Certainly congratulations to the wife. And then Dom, what are you looking forward to bring it home? What do you got going in your life?
Honestly, just living it. I'm a musician. Outside this project, I have my personal music that I'm doing and hope to release an album. Never released a personal album in all the years that I've been a musician. So it's kind of like something I'm trying to do just to have that piece of art for myself that people, oh, you're a musician. Let me hear something outside of my band, which I'm very proud of this album. I listen to it all the time. And started have more kids. Basically just live life. There's so much entanglement about the future. I feel like I used to plan the future, and it's unpredictable. I got blown up. You can't predict the future. You don't know what's gonna come. So I think I'm kind of reverting my days back to what we used to do in the military, chow to chow. I don't think past that. I just try to enjoy the day with my best friend, which is my wife. And if that means like enjoying lunch, I'm happy with that. And jamming out with my friends, I'm happy with that. Talking to an old friend, whatever it is, just soaking that up and enjoying it, because life is very precious and not something to be scared of. It's not like, oh, I sure you better enjoy it. No, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it in general. Just wake up and try to be happy.
That's great. And it was an honor to talk to you gentlemen today. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed today. Your stories are fantastic. Certainly thank you for your service. Again, it was just an honor, and I wish nothing but the best for all of you. And again, if you're in Arizona, you better look me up. I want to meet you gentlemen in person.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate you having us, brother. And let us know your sizes, and we'd love to send you some stuff.
Oh, I'll get it. As long as it's not gloves, I'll get it myself. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
And I actually do some blacksmithing. So if you ever want me to like forge you a custom hook, you just let me know.
I will do that. Actually, those are all the props back there, all my hooks that we talked about earlier. Again, thank you guys so much. Continued success, and everyone needs to go to that website and download the music and listen to it. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Bolland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikebolland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.